back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And I'm Ted Bannock, and I continue to love talking about cards.
Is that right, Ted?
I nailed it that time. Yeah. Yep, I sure do. So we're going to be having a really great episode that I think we're all excited to record and talk about, pick up from something we started discussing last week, right after this message about our patrons.
Thanks, Ted. So, have you ever thought about becoming a patron of our show? Okay, I'll stop with the announcer voice. We have a vibrant Patreon list, people who think highly enough of our show to give a couple of bucks a month, and we are rewarding those people with some prizes and swag and stuff like that. So if I actually have the swag, this year's swag right here, I'll bring it into the camera just slightly. There's one edge of the swag right there.
But teasing us.
I'm teasing everybody, right? And actually I have another part of the swag. It's a 2-part swag. Anyways, but if you're interested in becoming a Patreon or you want to support us, join right down here below Ted's covering Ted's camera, patreon.com/cardtalk2018, and you can become a patron. Join at any level. We appreciate all the support. We try to give everybody, whether you at whatever level, a little bit of something. But if you are a $5 and up patron, you get the big swag. The cutoff for this year is done, but for next year, you're on the list. So thank you to Jason. Jason's new, so thank you, Jason, for becoming a patron. Miles, Ryan, Manuel, Grant, Katie, Eric, Rachel, Tony, Valentin, Eric, Dern's father, Moritz, Anders, Shane, Micah, Chris, Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Alex, Edmund, Peter, Niall, Carl, Vardine, James, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Robert, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, Phil, Joseph, and Dominic. Everybody, wow, that's a long list, so it's humbling. Also, if you are interested in seeing a written version of the podcast, you can go over and see us at cardtalk2018.com, and you can see you can hear Katie talking about cards. No.
She's reading the blog.
She's reading the blog. Yes. And so you can see the blog, and Matt is over at the blog getting caught up with all the cards that we've done up to this point. It may need your help. So if you want to help out, do some back card reviews, if you have your own opinions, strong or otherwise, feel free to join us. Reach out to Matt or myself or Grant or Ted, social media, or Facebook, or that's social media. Or by email, cardtalk2018@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up for writing card reviews. That would be awesome. So anyways, that introduction just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. We're going to have to figure something out. Because, I mean, we just want to keep talking about cards. Like, we want to get to the cards. We want to continue. So, Grant, what are we going to do today?
Well, we're going to talk about Gildor's Council.
Well, more generally, right? We're tackling the lore sphere cards.
Yeah, okay. Refer back to the previous episode for the introduction. Instead of talking about leadership, we are now talking about lore.
Yeah, right. We're going to be talking about some cards that are good for multiplayer events for conventions and just in general.
Yeah, Con of the Rings is coming up, and we figured, many people probably don't play multiplayer. Maybe the con is going to be the first time they play multiplayer. That was me. Not quite me, but that was, a lot of people that I talked to at the con were solo players, and now they play live with 4 players, and that's a whole wild, new thing for them. So, Gildor's Council's one card, but there's a whole bevy of cards that you may not think about because you have blinders on when you're deck building, because you build, I've been building decks for 7-8 years, and I just know that Guilder's Council is never going to make it into a solo deck of mine because it just doesn't do anything solo.
Yep.
I'd be wasting 3 resources. But it's definitely a good card to use at a con. Grant, what does Guilder's Council tell us? What does it do?
Well, it's for 3 resources. Play during the quest phase before characters are committed to the quest. Response: reveal 1 less card from the encounter deck this phase to a minimum of 1. So if you're playing 2 players, you reveal 1 card. If you're playing 3, you reveal 2 for 3.
Yeah.
It's straightforward. Does exactly what it says on the tin, except for it does not cancel the surge. So if you reveal one of those cards and it has surge on, it still goes off.
So if you're playing single player, if you're playing solo, and it reduces the number of cards reduced, even though it doesn't, you still draw the 1, but you can't cancel the surge because you are reducing the number of cards off the encounter deck by 1, right? It doesn't cancel surge. Surge is separate. So
yeah, so for example, 2 players, you reveal 1 card, and that 1 card had the surge keyword, it would then still trigger the surge, and you'd still get that 2nd card.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, this is good. I've seen this card in action multiplayer, and it's really nice when you can recycle it and bring it back and play multiple copies of it, and reduce down to like 1 card. I don't think that there's a limit on it, right? You can play this. You could play 3 of them.
Yeah, just the minimum one card. So yeah, you could, if you have enough lore players and resources, in a 4-player game, you could play 3 in 1 round and just do 1 card.
Yep. And I played this a lot this past LCG con that we had a couple of weeks ago. I played this card a fair bit during that. Kept recycling it with Scroll of Isildur, and every couple of turns, we're revealing a couple of cards or a card, 2 cards less each round. So
I know. I mean, it's one of those
makes a big difference.
When last week when we were talking about leadership, it's like leadership is a good way to like draw more cards. This is a great way to reduce the encounter deck, and that's what lore does. Lore's like Trixie; it does all those crazy things, right? So, it's nice to be able to reduce the number of encounter card reveals there are.
Yep,
it helps manage the encounter deck.
Yeah, and I think,
which is very important in multiplayer.
And I think that 3 in multiplayer is not 3 cost is not as big of a hurdle to get over. Like you could probably play it with 2 lore heroes and still feel pretty good about it, and people will be happy. You probably could get some help from across the table, maybe using those leadership tricks and tactics, that we were talking
plenty
about
of
last
ways.
week.
Yeah. Like if someone said, hey, could I have a resource to play Guilder's Council? I'd be like, sure. Unless I had something dire, some really big
trying
card
to
get on the
keep
table.
one for a test of will, like you're trying to
Right.
do something silly, but right. Yep. Another card that I think is probably pretty good at all player counts is Deep Knowledge. And I mean, I think that's, so Grant, what's Deep Knowledge?
It is a 0 cost event. Doom 2, each player draws 2 cards.
Yeah, I just think that, I know that everybody has to pay the doomed, but I feel like in multiplayer events, people will want to pay the 2 to draw the 2 cards. I think that, when you're playing solo or 2-player, it's I don't know, it's a little less, but you kind of work it into the fold, into the feel of the. But here, I feel like everybody would be willing to pay 2 threat to draw 2 cards.
I mean,
most players will make that trade-off. There's just the thing when you're playing Doom cards and guarded cards, just consider, I'd say it's like table etiquette to take a survey before you do it with your fellow tables.
Before you do.
Right. That's important because you play solo and you're just used to kind of doing your own thing. But Ted, when you first came to the show, so many years ago, 2 years ago, we started talking about guarded cards and things like that, and you are less of a fan of guarded cards, but rightly so. Like, you play multiplayer a lot more than I do, so like when it's just me, I know what I'm getting myself into. But when you're playing in a whole table and you put out a guarded card, that affects everybody. So just make sure there's a little table etiquette there with with that. Guarded and doomed, because it affects everybody. But I feel like there's a good trade-off. I feel like deep knowledge would be.
Yeah, that's one of the ones where most players will be like, yep, unless it's late in the game and people's threat are starting to creep up. But like early on, it can help you get a foothold by just giving you more options to play.
Right.
Someone can pull some card that's key to their deck or really helps it chug along, or it can make a big difference for two threat.
Yep.
So what else we got?
The long defeat. John Rogers, last Con 2019, he came on and talked about long defeat. And Grant, what does long defeat do?
The long defeat is a 1-cost attachment attached to a quest card in play, limit 1 per quest card. Response: after the attached quest is defeated, each player either draws 2 cards or heals up to 5 damage among characters he controls.
It's good solo. It's really good multiplayer when you have that first, because again, the impact of spending, how much does it cost? 2?
1.
1? Yeah. Like the impact of spending 1 in the first round to put it on the first quest card that you see. So then, it's almost ridiculous that you wouldn't put a long defeat in your deck.
Yeah, like it's one resource for potentially up to 20 points of healing, more if you have Elrond on the table,
right?
Or one resource for 8 cards.
Right.
So that is actually better. I was talking about in a leadership episode, the one resource for 4 cards, Campfire Tales. I forgot about long defeat is actually better. It draws more cards per player.
Right. And you go in, there's some cards that you play that are played to lose, like when this card is destroyed, do something, like the Horn of Gondor, right? You're losing allies, and so you get money for the Horn of Gondor. This is a card that you're playing so that you're playing to win, right? You want to get through that, and it may even guide a little bit of the table's actions, like I'm about to lose an enemy, or I'm about to lose a hero. If we could quest really big this round, I can heal 4 of my damage off of this hero of mine and not lose my Aragorn or my Treebeard,
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, or my Baragon that's going to be a sentinel defender across the table for you, and so it seems like a pretty good multiplayer option. So, and then there's a couple of healing cards, Eoreth and Waters of Nimjordael. Eoreth is good. Heal 3, right? Heals 3 on a character.
You spend 1 low resource exhauster, and you can heal up to 3 damage on a character.
And that's really good because anybody can trigger her, right?
Yep.
And so because anybody can trigger her, you can get healing wherever you want for 1, and that's good. And Waters of the Nimrod, Ted, what's good about the Waters of the Nimrod?
Well, it heals. It's Doom 3 and it costs 3, so there's arguably a hefty price to pay. And if you want to listen to that episode, if you want to hear the debate on it, but it heals all damage on the table. So same property or same principle as the other cards we're talking about. You just heal. You have more characters in play in a 3 and 4 player game than you do in a 2-player game.
Right.
So you get more mileage.
It's likely to have a bigger effect. It's probably not worth it playing solo, but this card may see some really heavy lifting when you're playing 4-player, right? Like that's what you're trying to get at with the Waters of Nimrod, right?
Yeah. It has a much bigger impact.
Right. There's the potential for it. It's probably not going to see a lot of impact solo because you're not going to heal a ton. But
Right.
Right. So, Out of the Wild is on our list. Grant, what's Out of the Wild?
Out of the Wild is a secrecy event that costs 3, but is secrecy 2. You search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for any one non-objective card with no victory points and add it to the victory display. You then shuffle the encounter deck and add Out of the Wild to the victory display.
Right.
This is a way of thinning the encounter deck of nasty things.
Nasty treacheries and things like that, right?
Yeah, nasty things that are worth no victory points. Unfortunately, it does not work on like a hill troll or a cave troll.
Right.
But it does work on, say, Necromancer's Reach or the Master's Malice.
Right. Which maybe this is the time to talk a little bit about not cards. We'll come back to a couple other cards that we have on the list, but one of the things that you can run really well in multiplayer is a victory display deck. You can go net deck a victory display deck and figure it out. And some of the new ALEP cards are trying to help the victory display mechanic and things like that. But if you're playing 4-player and you have a victory display deck, you're probably welcome at most tables, because removing the encounter deck from the encounter deck is always really good to do. Like you're removing all those cards that thin the encounter deck, and it's just so you can specialize decks way better when you're playing 4-player.
Yeah. We keep talking about how player cards have a larger impact the more players you have, but there's also a fair number of treachery cards that have a more detrimental impact when you have more players, like the treacheries that say the ones that you guys named, right? Necromancer's Reach, it does more damage the more players you have. There's cards, Sleeping Sentry, Orc Ambush. There's just a
Master's Malice.
There's tons of ones that just do terrible damage. Boarding Party, it gets one enemy per player. Like that one treachery card is 4 cards, and if you just take that out of the deck, it's huge.
Right.
You don't have to worry about it, or it's going to come up less often if there's multiple copies.
Yeah, and I think that Keena's Lances becomes really good. If you're using Victory Display, Keena's Lances becomes really good because everybody can play Keena's Lances to do... Grant, tell us what Keena's Lances does.
Keena's Lances is a 5-cost card that costs less with the more victory... costs less for each card with no victory points in the victory display.
Right. Reduced its cost by 1 for every card worth no victory points in the victory display. Right?
Yep, and then you've got the action. Add Keena's Lances to the victory display, then choose one. Either add 2 resources to a hero's resource pool, draw 3 cards, or reduce your threat by 4.
Right, so it's like Gandalf Light, which is phenomenal. And so people... One of the things that you should keep in your sideboard is Keena's Lances, because when people are running a victory display deck, first of all, you become like the happy table guy, and then you can put Keena's Lances in your deck no matter what, even if it's your 51st, 52nd, 53rd cards, if you're a 50-card purist, just put them in, add them, because it only does more for you when that happens. So even if you're playing multiplayer and nobody's running victory display, you can still use Keena's Lances. The first person may have to pay 5, but then the next person pays 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then it's still maybe worth it if nobody's running a victory display deck. So and that's one of the things that I like about playing multiplayer, is that you can specialize decks a lot more. If you have a deck that's not very good at questing but can attack and defend, bring it to the con. Right? If you have a Trixie deck that can, put stuff in the victory display, bring it to the con. If you have a Trixie deck that can quest really well and keep your threat down low so that you're not engaging anybody, but you can help other people and heal, bring it to the con. Those decks would never fly playing solo, but they definitely work playing multiplayer. But make sure you talk to the people, right? that you're playing with, Ted, right?
Generally good advice. I mean, it's like, remember, it's a cooperative game and everybody has the same goal in mind. So, talk about your strategy, talk about what you intend to play this turn and what you kind of want to do next turn. And the more coordination you do, the better.
Right.
Yeah, just don't listen to the table talk rule, where you're not meant to tell other people what you're meant to be, what you're going to do. Just disregard that and just have fun. Explain what you're wanting to do this turn, and see if everybody else can either help you get there, or it may mess something they want to do up. It's just be nice.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, especially definitely don't. You can play unique cards, right? It's okay to have unique cards. Like we talked about having Eoreth and having Gandalf and tons and tons of great allies. So don't not put those in your deck. But before the game, just talk about the ones you have and say, hey, these are in my deck. Or even if you want to, it's okay. Like if multiple people have Ally Faramir in their deck, Leadership Faramir, the one that boosts willpower, and someone's like, oh, I'm going to take it out. I'm like, why? Both of you should put Ally Faramir in your deck, because the sooner we have more chances of one of you drawing him and putting him on the table.
Right.
Because then he benefits the game that we're all playing. So
right, and the chances are you can, with 4 people, you can also do something. There's probably more of a chance. Well, there's definitely more of a chance that you're going to be able to do something with that dead card in your hand. Maybe somebody's running Spirit Eowyn, pitch a card for Song of Healing, like whatever it is. Like there's probably a choice, that you'll probably have something that you can do with dead cards in your hand, as opposed to playing solo where you have to deal with all those things yourself. So, the last couple of cards here we have in the lore sphere. Ted, you were talking about leather boots. So, Ted, what does leather boots do?
Oh, yeah, just real quickly. So, leather boots, it doesn't necessarily benefit people in the multiplayer, but it's a 1-cost attachment. You put it on a lore character or a ranger. So if you have lots of eligible targets, right? You may have other players that just have ranger heroes, right? Think of all the Aragorns that have the ranger trait and all the Dunedains that have it. So what it does is you put it on your character, and whenever a location is revealed from the encounter deck, you get to exhaust the boots to ready that character. And it's a great substitution if you have Wingfoot in your deck to ready your ranger character, which is unique. And it's more reliable the higher the player count, because if you're playing 3 or 4 players, you have a much higher chance of drawing a location, and it's gonna trigger much higher chance.
Right.
So again, something to consider. And yeah, you put in 3 copies, because the odds of you coming up against being able to play it on other heroes is pretty high, considering how broad it is.
Mm-hmm. And Grant, you were talking about Heed the Dream. So what's Heed the Dream, and why was Heed the Dream on the list?
Heed the Dream is a nice little card that allows you to search your deck. Just pull it up. It is a 1-cost lore event. Choose a player. That player searches the top 5 cards of his deck for a card and adds it to his hand and shuffles his deck. Then the players as a group may spend 3 leadership resources to have that player search his deck for another card and add it to his hand and shuffles his deck.
Yeah, I mean, that's Heed the Dream is a good card anyway, but the fact that you can choose somebody, Grant, I'm going to choose you to draw a card, and then that may help you get your deck going, and then as a group, I mean, if it means that you're going to get Gandalf up and running even quicker because I'm going to pay three leadership resources, or I'm going to pay one, Ted's going to pay one, and Matt at the blog is going to pay one, then that's pretty awesome. So, would I do that? Sure. I would help kick a Heed the Dream for a person to get their deck going, especially if mine's floundering, right? So that target anyone thing is really nice.
Yeah, and and that comes like early game and late game, it's helpful, right? Like, when are you not looking for more cards? Maybe the very, very last turn, even at the very, very last turn of the game, you might be like, oh, if I wish I had something to boost our willpower,
yeah,
or,
exactly.
or heal my characters to make sure they don't die.
Right. Go look for a test of will,
yeah. Cancellation for shadows or treacheries.
Right. Yeah. And so, I think Heed the Dream and Leather Boots are good cards anyways, but they can really shine much better in multiplayer. So that's that's why they make the list.
Oh.
Well, guys, that seems like we covered a bunch of cards and lore to get ready for the con. Is there any last gasp we have about the list?
No, I think we covered it. We certainly didn't name everything, so it's a good time to comb through your collection and consider cards that, like, oh, you know what, I've never played this before, or yeah, I'd really like to see what this does in a 4-player game. It's a great opportunity to do that. So go back, listen to some old Card Talk episodes, and maybe some ones that interested you if you're on the fence, and hear us drum up some ideas for you, maybe.
All right. Yeah, and a good way to be able to find those Card Talk episodes is go right to the blog and all the episodes. Not all the episodes yet, but we're updating slowly and surely, but they're organized right there on the blog, so you can go, if you want to hear the show about the waters of Nimrod, you can go back and hear what Ted and Grant and I had to say about it. So maybe it sways maybe it inspires you to build a deck. Healing is always great to bring to the con, to have a healing deck. I would hazard a guess that if all your deck did was heal and like cancel damage and like prevent enemies from attacking, you would probably be a hero at the con. Like people would love you. So anyways, it's good stuff. So Grant, any last gasps from you about the lore cards?
No, I think we've hit the nail on the head.
Okay. Well, everybody, join us again next week as we tackle the spirit cards as we get ready for Con of the Rings in early October. Everybody, have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube, and there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.